3 days after Sarah found her husband's secret account, Daniel tried to access the money. And for the first time in 30 years, he looked at his wife like she was a stranger. Daniel's hand had been on the mouse. His jaw tightened. He refreshed the screen twice. Then he turned toward Sarah. "What did you do?" Sarah didn't answer right away. Because 3 days earlier, she had been sitting across from him at dinner while he told her, once again, that they couldn't afford the one thing she'd wanted for years, a vacation. But Daniel had looked at Sarah and said the same words he'd been saying for years. "We can't afford that. Retirement is our future." Sarah believed him. That was her first mistake. Sarah was 57, and she and Daniel had been married for nearly 30 years. They lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Charlotte, North Carolina, in the same brick house where they'd raised their children. Their life wasn't glamorous, but Sarah thought it was honest. That evening, she had a brochure beside her plate for a small coastal resort in South Carolina. "Just 5 days," she said. "When you retire, we could finally do something for ourselves." Daniel barely looked at the brochure. "Sarah, we can't afford that." He said it gently, almost like he was protecting her from her own idea. Then he added the sentence she'd heard 100 times. "We need to think about our future." Their future. Sarah looked at him and nodded. "Okay." He smiled. But as he was talking about their retirement, his phone buzzed beside his plate. He glanced at the screen. Then he turned the phone face down. Sarah noticed. She just didn't understand why it mattered. Not yet. For years, Sarah had made sacrifices because she believed in that future. When her car started needing repairs every few weeks, Daniel told her not to finance a new one, so she kept driving it. When their kitchen appliances began breaking down one by one, they replaced only what absolutely had to be replaced. When Sarah's sister invited her on a weekend trip, she declined. "We're saving," she told her. She believed every word. Daniel had convinced Sarah that every sacrifice was temporary. "When I retire," he'd say, "we'll travel, we'll relax, we'll finally enjoy ourselves." Then, one Tuesday morning, everything changed. Daniel asked Sarah to find a tax document in his home office. His desk was covered with folders, receipts, and old statements. She was searching through a drawer when she found an envelope from a financial institution she'd never heard of. She held it up. "What is this?" Daniel appeared in the doorway almost instantly. He took the envelope from her hand. "Old investment account." Sarah frowned. "Which account?"
"Just an old one." "How much is in it?" His expression changed. "Why are you suddenly questioning every financial decision I make?" Sarah stared at him. That sentence bothered her more than the envelope. For 30 years, money had been something they'd discussed together. Suddenly, he was acting like she'd crossed a line. "I'm not questioning you," Sarah said quietly. "I was just asking." He put the envelope in his desk. "It's nothing you need to worry about." Sarah walked away, but something inside her had shifted. 3 days later, Sarah found the statement. It was sitting beneath several tax documents in the same office. She recognized the financial institution immediately. She opened it, and she stopped breathing. There was a substantial amount of money in that account, far more than she'd imagined. She read the balance again, then again. Her hands started shaking. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with the statement in front of her. And suddenly, every conversation they'd had about money replayed in her head. "We can't afford that. Let's wait until retirement. We need to be careful. That's too expensive." She looked at the statement again. Then she whispered to herself, "If this money exists, what else has he been hiding from me?" That question changed everything. For the first time, Sarah understood that the hardest part wasn't discovering the money.
It was realizing how Daniel had separated his truth from hers. Sarah didn't confront him. She didn't call her children. She didn't call her sister. She waited. Then she started looking at the financial records she could legitimately access. The account had existed for years. There were regular deposits. But there were also recurring transfers. And those transfers were going somewhere connected to Daniel's family. At first, Sarah tried to explain it away. Maybe he was helping someone. Maybe there was a family emergency. But the amounts weren't small. And they weren't occasional. They were consistent. That was when the hurt became something heavier. Daniel hadn't simply saved money without telling her. He had been telling Sarah to sacrifice while secretly deciding where money went. Then she discovered who was receiving it. His younger brother, Eric. Eric owned a small contracting business that had been struggling for years. Danielle had been quietly helping him. And according to the records Sarah found, Danielle intended to send even more. That night, Sarah sat alone in their bedroom while rain tapped against the windows. She thought about the old car sitting in their driveway, the kitchen appliances, the vacation she'd canceled. All the little things she'd told herself didn't matter because they were building their future. Sarah finally understood. She had been sacrificing for a future Danielle was planning without her.
She wanted to confront him immediately, but she didn't. Instead, she became very calm. She organized the statements. She wrote down dates. She gathered the financial documents she was entitled to review. And she sought independent professional advice so she could understand exactly where she stood. Sarah wasn't trying to steal Daniel's money. She wasn't trying to destroy him. She was making sure he couldn't make decisions for both of them while pretending she had no right to understand them. Then Daniel made his biggest mistake. One Thursday evening, he walked into the kitchen carrying a folder. "We need to move some money," he said. Sarah's stomach tightened. "Why?"
"It's an investment opportunity." She knew immediately. His brother. Daniel placed the papers in front of her. "I just need your signature." Sarah looked at the documents. Then she looked at him. "How long do I have to decide?" He frowned. "Sarah, we need to do this now." "No." He blinked. Sarah had almost never said no to him like that. "I'll review it first." His voice hardened. "Why are you making this difficult?" Sarah closed the folder. "Because I want to understand what I'm signing." He stared at her. Then he walked away. For the next 3 days, Daniel assumed Sarah was simply being cautious. He had no idea she already knew. And she was ready. On the third evening, Sarah placed the financial statement on their dining table. When Daniel walked in, he saw it immediately. He stopped. His face went pale. Sarah didn't raise her voice. She simply asked, "How long were you planning to let me believe we couldn't afford our own life?" He looked at the statement, then at her. "Sarah, I can explain." "Then explain." He said the account was for retirement. Sarah pointed to the transfers. "And these?" He hesitated. Finally, he admitted he'd been helping Eric. "You would have stopped me," he said. Sarah felt something inside her break. She looked directly at him. "You didn't trust me enough to let me decide." He had no answer. Then came the moment Sarah would never forget. Daniel tried to access the money he had planned to move, but the protection Sarah had established meant he couldn't simply use the funds the way he'd expected. He turned toward her. "What did you do?" Sarah stood there calmly. "I didn't sabotage anything." She paused. "I stopped you from making decisions for both of us without me." His brother started calling. Then other family members did. Suddenly, everyone wanted Sarah to be reasonable.
One relative told her she was destroying 30 years of marriage over money. Sarah finally said what she'd been holding inside for years. I could have accepted a difficult retirement. I could have accepted less money. What I couldn't accept was being told to sacrifice, while my husband secretly did what our money was really for. Nobody had an answer. Not even Daniel. A few weeks later, he asked if they could repair their marriage. Sarah told him she didn't know. 30 years don't disappear because of one secret. But neither does trust return because someone says they're sorry after getting caught. Lily had listened to every detail of Sarah's story. But one thing stayed with her. Sarah still didn't know what the future held for her marriage. But she knew something now that she hadn't known before. Retirement wasn't a future her husband got to define for her. It was hers too.
And Sarah remembered that little brochure she had beside her plate that night, the one for the coastal resort Daniel said they couldn't afford. She kept it. Months later, she finally booked the trip. Not because she suddenly had money to waste, because she finally understood what she'd forgotten during all those years of sacrifice. Her future was never supposed to be something another person controlled behind a locked screen. It was supposed to be something they chose together. Lily said Sarah's story reminded her that sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as a sentence like, "We can't afford that." And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't taking something from the person who betrayed you. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let them control your future ever again. If Sarah's story reminds you of someone who spent years being told to wait until later, share it with them. And subscribe.